Matcha's been kind of trendy lately. It's a great alternative to coffee if you need something highly caffeinated but don't want to switch to energy drinks. While it's not as simple as steeping a regular cup of tea, making matcha lattes at home is actually much easier than it looks. To start, you'll need to get a whisk, a bowl, a matcha scoop, a tea strainer, some matcha, a cup with ice, some sweetener, and some milk. To me, the hardest thing about making matcha as a beginner was just finding matcha that I really liked. Grocery store matchas tend to be pretty bitter and grassy. My daily matcha comes from my local tea shop, which comes with the perk of seeing the shop owner's dog every time I restock. This tea shop is also where I get all of my tools. I've also found a lot of great teas watching reviewers like Meredith Mao and Matcha Mommy on TikTok. You can usually spot a good matcha by its color. The single origin matcha powder is a nice bright green. It smells sweet and a little floral when I open the tin and is really finely milled. On the other hand, this Republic of Tea matcha is pretty dull, almost a gray color. It looks a little less finely ground and doesn't really smell like anything. Generally, you'll want to avoid culinary matcha and opt for barista blends or ceremonial grade matchas instead. Ceremonial grade matcha tends to be more fragrant and have a better depth of flavor, while culinary matcha tends to be really bitter and is better suited for baking. Barista blends tend to be in between ceremonial and culinary grade matcha, but they'll do just fine for most drinks, especially if you're adding flavors like vanilla or cinnamon. Matcha has some really delicate flavor elements that might get covered up depending on what milk you use. This is especially true for non-dairy milks. This oat milk from Costco is great for coffee, but tastes way too strong for matcha. I use the Oatly full-fat milk instead for my tea. Something like this will give you a nice creamy base and bring out the flavor of the matcha without covering it up. That all being said, sweeteners can make a big difference to your end result as well. My favorite sweetener is honey, but if you just want to sweeten your tea without adding any additional flavor, make sure to go with something neutral like a simple syrup, white sugar, or agave. Now, it's time for the easiest part. First, boil your water. Matcha likes water around 170 degrees. If your kettle doesn't have temperature controls, just set your water to boil, then let it sit for a few minutes after it's stopped bubbling. While the water's still boiling, you'll want to find a tall glass and completely fill it with ice. Splash your milk in between half and 2/3 of the way full. Matcha drinks are suspensions, with all of the tea grounds floating around the drink. So make sure to do this before you whisk up your tea. That way, none of those grounds will sink to the bottom. Next, sift your matcha. Carefully scoop some powder onto your matcha scoop. You can use a spoon too, but these bamboo scoops avoid compressing your matcha. I like my lattes pretty caffeinated, so I do 3 pretty full scoops, probably about a tablespoon, but you should end up with anywhere between 1 to 2 teaspoons. Now it's time to add your water and whisk. Fill your matcha bowl just enough to cover the whole bottom, then add a little bit more. I fill up to where the straight sides of my bowl start. At this point, I like to add in my sweeteners too, so that they dissolve easily in the hot water. When you're ready to start whisking, start by swirling around the bowl a few times in circular motions. Gently scrape the bottom. Then lift the whisk away from the bowl just a little bit and start whisking in quick M-shaped motions. You'll want to do this for at least 30 seconds. Well-aerated matcha will taste better and feel nice and creamy, so it's important not to under-whisk. Start with pretty large, vigorous M-shapes, and finish with smaller ones to get rid of any large air bubbles. You'll know you're finished when you can see a nice layer of uniform foam. Now, quickly pour your matcha over the ice. Pouring the matcha is my favorite part. I love seeing the bright green marble through the milk, and it's so satisfying to see a nice cap of foam on top. I like to give mine a few gentle stirs so that I end up with a really pretty gradient. If you like a uniform drink, go ahead and mix yours up and enjoy your homemade matcha latte.